Democratic presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. may be eyeing a third-party run. According to a recent New York Times report, Kennedy publicly told the voter who asked about his plans that he was keeping his, quote, options open. The report also notes that back in July, Kennedy met with the chair of the Libertarian Party. Let's bring in right now correspondent for Vanity Fair, Joe Hagan. His latest piece is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Mad, 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 Mad World. And like many people that you talked to in your piece, I've known Bobby for quite some time. And I think like everybody that's known Bobby for quite some time, I like him a lot. I mean, I heard the guy give some speeches on the environment 20 years ago that were extraordinarily moving, very effective. And I talked to a lot of his friends now who always saw some of this tendency in him, but you shake their head and think that what he's doing now is sort of sad. Kind of the conclusion that you got to. Tell us about your mad day in, I guess, from Hyannisport down to Nantucket.
Well, listen, I went there wanting to experience this Kennedy charm. You know, I wanted to learn something about, his connection with his family. That was the intent of the story.
Now he doesn't trust the press, but you all had a connection and made him think that even though Bobby thinks that the press has just completely treated him unfairly, he thought you'd give him a fair shot.
Well, we had a mutual friend in the late Peter Kaplan, who was a great newspaper editor and a mentor of mine, and it was his college roommate at Harvard. And so this was like something of a connection. And I told him, well, because of that, I'm going to write this piece in first person. You know, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of get a more up close look at him and tell people in an unvarnished way what it's like to be around him. And I have to say, I expected to be charmed. I wanted to see the Kennedy estate, and I wanted to find out about his history. And well, it didn't turn out that way. And when I began to kind of ask him basic questions, I thought, about his campaign, and you talk about the possibility of him running as a libertarian, he clearly does not like the party he's in, which is he's constantly critical of it. His biggest fans are Steve Bannon and, Tucker Carlson, whose show he had been on the night before he saw me. And, a basic journalistic question would be like, well, what's that about? And so he got really aggravated and really enraged, actually, the more I asked these kinds of questions. And, at some point I felt, bullied by him. And I think this is, part of this personality tick that I think some of his friends are curious about today. Like, why is he trafficking in so many conspiracy theories? Because he laid so many on me. I mean, a mile a minute, my head was spinning. I couldn't keep heads or tails, whether it's the CIA or the FDA or the big pharma and, Bill Gates, and everybody's connected, and I'm involved apparently too. The media has been compromised by the CIA. It was one thing after another. And, you think you're in some Alex Jones hit. And so I felt disappointed, I have to say, with how hostile he turned out to be. And he may have found me hostile to asking these questions, but how surprised can you be if you're running for president of the United States that a reporter shows up and asks some hard questions?
Yeah. Again, my experiences with him, always positive. He's always, always has been a charming person. He's certainly, obviously, reading this article, he does feel put upon by the media, but I thought it was so fascinating. He and I'll just say other conspiracy theorists, because Bobby, even his closest friends and family members will say right now he sounds like a conspiracy theorist. They come up with these theories. And I thought, and he told you, read this book of mine. You didn't even do your job. You said, okay, I'll read the book. And he was talking about how, the second the vaccines came online, after those vaccines came online, death surged. And so the vaccines, in his eyes, caused death. Just a little bit of research showed how absolutely skewed, and I'm sorry to say, just how false that claim was.
Yeah.
If you just look at the data even from the Trump administration.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I'm an English major, okay? And I was able to, very quickly see the manipulation in these many charts that he publishes in his book, A Letter to Liberals, by the way, which is his, critique of the Democratic Party as, corrupted and so on and so forth. And that's a separate argument. But it's infuriating on some level because we know, having lived through the pandemic, how many thousands of people died unnecessarily because they believed that vaccines were going to hurt them. And so this isn't just, a benign conspiracy theory. This is a public health danger to be spreading this kinds of information. And he wants to attack the White House for being upset about this while they're trying to get people vaccinated. And so, now he's hostile to them. He's hostile to Joe Biden and so on and so forth. So, he's kind of like decided that he's a lone wolf. And, the psychology of that, we can analyze it. Why did he get like this? If you read his memoir about his family, American Values, he talks about, listen, I came up in a family that I was taught that we were on a great crusade and that I would be fortunate if I could have a heroic role in American life. And, he is trying to pull the sword from the stone. I mean, it's a classic thing. And but he's gone down this path. And I have to say, it's a path that he is not alone in this. He obviously has some percentage of people that believe what he's saying. There are other politicians in the right wing of American politics who also kind of follow some of this stuff. Your Rand Pauls, your Donald Trumps. And but he is very expert at something that's known as Brandolini's Law. And people should look this up. This is really interesting. Brandolini's Law, an Italian computer programmer came up with this. The amount of energy it takes to refute BS is an order of magnitude more than it takes to produce it. And so he goes on these podcasts, he goes on these cable channels, and he spouts one thing after another, and you can't make heads or tails of it. And by the time your head stops spinning, he's left the room. So then you're left, like me, to go back to your house, look at these crazy books that he's published, and then try to make heads or tails of it and refute it for the public, because I don't want him just to be saying these things in my story and then everybody has to say, oh, well, gee, that might be true. You have to analyze it. And so let me just say lastly that the thing that he did during our interview was consistently call into question my integrity and the integrity of all reporters and us in the media. We are the biggest, easiest punching bag for any politician. Everybody knows that. It's the Donald Trump fake news, method. Well, he's taken that up, and he's decided that we're all corrupt and we're all part of some, vast conspiracy. And, I'm sorry, but I don't buy it because I know it's not true. If Big Pharma or the CIA wants to call me and offer me a check, okay, then we'll talk. But that's not what happens, right? So I'm joking. But you get what I mean. It's offensive. And so this was the, tenor of my experience with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
It's good to know there's a name for Brandolini's Law. We didn't know that. We call it drinking from a fire hose, and Donald Trump does it too when it's coming at you so fast. Right. You've got to process it and decipher what's true and what's not. And as you do well in this piece, just going, all those articles he sent you, all those studies showing that they didn't make any sense. So I guess my question, like Joe, I don't know Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but I know a lot of people who do and applaud the work he did with Riverkeeper and Waterkeeper and cleaning up the rivers and lakes, not just here in New York, but around the world, actually, and done great work there. Where was the turn? And I guess the bigger question is, where does this chip on his shoulder come from? What is he so angry about? By definition, given his name, he's lived a life of incredible entitlement and privilege. If his last name wasn't Kennedy, nobody would be paying attention to him right now. He'd be another guy yelling conspiracy theories on the traffic island at 79th Street. So where does this come from for him?
Well, listen, he's been inveighing against vaccines for 20 years. The first time he came out publicly with this stuff was in the pages of Rolling Stone, Jan Winter's Rolling Stone. And it was retracted since then because it turned out to be false. And then he went on a thing about the 2004 election was stolen from votes in Ohio from Kerry. That was debunked. But I will say that what I think is that, and this is, I hate to be, try to get into people's head and analyze them, but it is partly my job as a profiler of people in magazines. There's a certain ego satisfaction to having being affirmed for things you say. And when you can just make things up or have crackpot scientists come to you and say, hey, if you, go after this idea, you're going to get a lot of attention for it. You're going to seem like you're on a kind of crusade with a fiery sword of righteousness on your side. And that must feel good to him. And, he's obviously also a person who's been working out a lot. And he's said on the record that he's taking something called organic testosterone. His body looks unlike any 69-year-old that I know. And one does wonder, whether he's just got some kind of, pumped up, rageful vision of himself, and his ego's being stroked by all of these 18% of people who are against vaccines and think he's a hero.